Alright, you guys. Hello, LaSherry. Hello, family. Facebook family. YouTube family. This is day 2, Confessions of a Child, self-reflection series. I kind of want to just jump right in it today. I don't want to waste no time. I want to jump right in it. This is my 7-day spiritual atonement, and I have to do this. First and foremost, I'm doing this for myself. Secondly, I'm doing this for my family. Thirdly, I'm doing this for my spiritual development. All right, where did I leave off? So I was born in 91, left the hospital, went with my Bowie family. Let's get into my Bowie family. My dad, Omar, man, such a tall, dark, handsome black man, you know, got a gift of gab, you know, just know how to talk. It's a beautiful spirit, just a good guy, man. You know, my dad, Omar, he was in and out of jail a lot, like I told y'all in the last video. And so when I was around him, I felt loved, but he wasn't really there because he was in and out of jail. And so the real story is with his family, his mother and his brothers, his little brothers, because he was the oldest of 3, and my uncles, Henri and O'Shea. You know, they were like my dads, but they were my uncles or my big brothers. and you know, it was a beautiful life. I mean, I was a baby, you guys, so I'm only telling you what I've collected over the years. So I'm thinking like 92, 93, 94. I went to preschool over here in Carol City, Bajas. I'm from Miami, born and raised. So I was in preschool in Carol City, and you know, had old school grandma, went to church, dressed me up for church, you know, the whole shebang. Oh, my dad is Bahamian American, you guys. So my grandmother's American from Chicago, and his dad is Bahamian. And the way they met, I gotta explain it because it's my history, was my grandmother went to Bahamas and, you know, met my dad's dad, and that's how my dad came to be. So coming up in a Bahamian American lifestyle over here in America with my dad's family, Omar, it was in Miami. It was pretty amazing. You know, they love teaching and all of those good things. And so that Bahamian American lifestyle that I had with my dad's family, my daddy Omar's family, was extremely wonderful, man. You know, if you know anything about the island family, they're very structured, you know, all about education, but very structured, but have fun, you know, always, you know, the parties, everything. So going into my uncles, because my uncles were like my dad. My uncle Henri, he was the oldest. He was like the one responsible for me. So he was the one that was like really like my dad, and I really clung to him because he was a musician, and he played the keys, and he used to produce. And so y'all gotta think, this like the early 90s. So with my Uncle Reek, I used to always watch him make his beats, and I used to just sit because he used to have to babysit me. And I remember going to his room, and inside his room he used to have musicians everywhere. Tupac, he used to have girls on the roof, different, chicks on the roof, and then he has to have all the different music artists around his room with all the football trophies and all of this type of trophies. And, because it was just my uncles, my grandma had 3 boys. Like I said, my dad wasn't really there. He was in and out of jail. And got my Uncle O'Shea, he was like my older brother. He was the baby before I kind of came into the picture. So it was a lot of beef between us. It was a lot of fighting, wrestling, tassling. A lot of my Uncle Henrique pushing me, to fight my Uncle O'Shea. Which, and we kind of used to go back and forth. That's actually how I got my gash right here on my eyebrow a long time ago. It was fighting or whatever. But yeah, I kind of had a beautiful upbringing. So this is the early 90s. This is preschool. And so I'm in preschool. I was going to preschool, living with my Bowie family. We was going to church, woo, woo, woo. I learned how to walk, learn how to talk, learn how to read, all of those basic things. And my mother wasn't around because, she was still young, still trying to make it on her own. And so, in a sense, I was just kind of living with my grandma Bowie family. And so now I know it was somewhere in between, like I want to say maybe in between like 95, 96, around 4 or 5 years old, where, my mom used to come around, and I just remember I had to leave. I had to go. And when I talked to my mom about it, or to my dad about it, my other dad, he said that, and this is how I connected all you guys. So he said, I went to your mom and I asked her, could you live with my family? Because I didn't know where you were. He didn't know that I was living with my Bowie family. I think only my mom, that was, I was my mom's child, And so my dad told my mom he wanted me to live with his family. At this time, he's in the Air Force. So I believe he had got remarried by this time, living in Texas. But all I know is that he wanted me to live with his family, his Jamaican family, which was also here in Miami. And so I think that was maybe going into kindergarten, because that's really when I started school. So maybe it was going into kindergarten. So that had to be about, like 97 or something like that. And so going into kindergarten, now we transitioning over, grew up a beautiful, I felt loved. Everything was great in my preschool years, growing up with my grandma Bowie family and my uncles and everything. So transitioning over to my Jamaican family, I always knew that I couldn't speak about. They thought I actually lived with my mom. So by the time I got to my Jamaican family, they thought, I was just living with my mom this whole time. And so I'm with my Jamaican family, and it's amazing. It was because, Bahamian American, Jamaicans, island, kind of similar in structure, similar in education. And so it was very similar. They had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. They think like Mondays was like fish night, and then we had like Manishwater night, and then you had like oxtail night, and the friends came over, and then one day it was like all guys, then one day it was like all girls. It was like always parties. I know that my family came over from Jamaica because my granddad, he was a welder, and he had his own business. So now I'm talking about my Jamaican family, you guys. And so this is like elementary, kindergarten now. And my granddad had his own business. He moved his wife and his 6 kids from Jamaica over to America in, I believe, 88. 91 I was born. So I think I moved with them around like 95, 96. And you know, typical Jamaican family with their own business, all about education. You know, my aunts at this time, it was 6 kids in the house, but the only people that technically lived there were the last 2 girls. So there were 3 boys and there were 3 girls. My dad was the second oldest, and the last 2 girls were more like my mother's and my grandmother, my Jamaican grandmother. So in the house living with my Jamaican family, it was an amazing experience. My aunts, you know, if anyone understands Jamaican culture, you know that the young ladies, well, at least in my family, the young ladies, they don't wear, you know, weave. They wore their natural hair. They didn't have, you know, fake nails. They didn't, you know, dress seductive in a sense. You know, they were like jeans and t-shirt type of women. Every once in a while, you know, my auntie Julie was a little bit more girlier, so she liked her girly stuff. But, you know, jeans and t-shirt, you know, their mom and their dad don't allow them to dress like that growing up. So we're talking about the early 90s. And actually, everyone in my Jamaican family went to high school with my mom and my dad, the same high school that they went to. And it's a reason why I'm saying that later on. So now we at transitioning over kindergarten. So my dad didn't live with my Jamaican family, which is his family. He didn't live with us. I didn't understand why he didn't live with us, but I started to understand that later. So he didn't live with us, and I think he didn't live with us because it was so much friction in the house. I obviously was, as a kid, you didn't understand why there was a lot of friction. You just know that you in a house, you in another house. You know, you just kind of going by the rules. Again, growing up, as y'all could tell, I was always kind of the only kid. I was always the youngest in a house full of adults or teenagers. And so actually when I got out, and so this is elementary school, elementary years, you guys, it was just like, other kids, you know what I'm saying, excited. And the reason why, you know, I guess for some of y'all, you know, this is my Confessions of a Child self-reflection series, and this is my 7-day atonement. And the reason why I'm doing early childhood today is because, you know, early childhood is like a special and crucial development time, like within the child's brain. You know, like that's actually when the brain develops the fastest and when the brain is like most receptive to change. And so, you know, with that understanding, you know, you could do your own research. It's like, that is why this particular period that I'm explaining is such an important period. And so let's continue. So now we're transitioning to the Jamaican household. Well, we already in the Jamaican household. This is going into kindergarten, 1st grade. I already know how to read. And my dad doesn't live in the house. So I guess my dad, he divorced his wife, and he came back to Miami. And so now he's living in Miami while I'm living in the Jamaican household. And and y'all listen, my dad is a good guy. He's a really good guy. His parenting skills, they could have been a little bit better, but he's a really good guy. And so I didn't understand this until later. And I started to think, all right, well, you know what? Let me just go on. So this is elementary school. And when my dad moved to Miami, as I was living in a Jamaican household, now we're talking about my dad, Randy, Jamaican household. He was, he was in the Air Force. So he was very militant. He was very, very structured. Already the house was like that. Because the Jamaican household that's usually how that rock anyways. But, my dad was extremely militant and structured. And he believed in education. And so, my dad was he was a heavy reader. And he wanted me to be a heavy reader as well, which I am today. And I love that. But in his parenting skills, or in his parenting approach, it was very unorthodox. And before I got into elementary school, or maybe going right into kindergarten, first grade, I was already a reader because I was already being taught how to read. And the way that I was being taught how to read in my Jamaican household was a little bit, it was great. So the great part about it was that my aunts, remember, they were there. They were like, they wanted to be teachers in high school. I always remembered them saying that. And so they used to kind of take me on as like their student. And it was a teaching process, and I used to have to go to their softball games, and I pretty much experienced their high school experience with them being their niece. And as well as them teaching me how to read, and the symbols and the numbers and this and that, and just making the learning process a lot more fun and engaging. And I love watching TV. I love listening to Michael Jackson and watching a lot of music videos. But when my dad came home, and first of all, there was no watching TV. And so, my dad didn't believe like children should watch TV. And so when he came home and he seen me watching TV, I used to have to like, hey, boy, try not to watch TV, or hope that he don't say nothing to me. But I know he's going to say something to me. And so he always did. Or sometimes I probably turned off the TV before he came in. But again, you guys, I only did this with my dad. Like my aunts, my grandmother, everybody could be there. My grandfather, my grandfather, everybody could be there. And if my dad came out, like run in the room or something, just so that he won't see me watching TV. And I'll probably quickly go grab a book. And again, I realized that I became conditioned this way. And so a part of that conditioning is I think is something that a lot of people don't understand within the child psyche. And let's go to reading. So kindergarten, second grade, I'm an exceptional reader. The way that my dad taught me, or the way that he disciplined me, was as I was reading, one, I used to have to read all day. It was like an all day thing. Reading, read all day. And more specifically, my dad bought me a children's Bible. And I used to have to read this children's Bible front to cover. That's all I read when I was with my dad. When I was with my aunts, I was able to read other things. But when I was with my dad, it was the Bible. It was the children's Bible that he bought me from cover to cover. And it was a thick Bible. Obviously it was a children's Bible, so it had pictures and colors and everything, and it was nice, and it was beautiful. It was a good story. And so reading this book, y'all just bear with me, all right? I gotta get through it. It's early childhood. So reading this book, and this is a everyday process. So I just kind of want to explain my dad's teaching structure, or how he taught. So reading this book, you'll be reading Genesis, You reading, and it will be like a word that come up, Deuteronomy. So any child that first reads the word Deuteronomy, they won't necessarily pronounce it the right way. But my dad, in his bonding and in his teaching, he actually, I had to read to him. So I have to read out loud, and I have to read to him. And so as I'm reading to him, read to him. Listen, my dad could be doing anything. He was really good with his hands. So he could be fixing a car. It could be early in the morning. It could be anything. And so, reading to him, if I messed up on the word the first time, he'll correct me. And he'll be under the car, and he'll say, Deuteronomy. He'll say it the right way the first time. But believe me, if I messed up on the same word a second time, he was coming from up under the car, and I was getting a beating, to put it in plain terms. And my dad didn't believe in belts, so he just kind of beat me with his hands. A lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of verbal abuse. My dad didn't call me by my name. He called me Egyal. That's what he called me, Egyal. You mess up on the word again? So it was Gyal. That's what he called me, Gyal. And so, again, that's just reading, y'all. So we could talk about the daily life. The daily life in the Jamaican household was when my dad was there. When my dad was not there, it was regular. It was wake up, go brush your teeth, wash your face, come back, make up your bed, go sit in the living room, read a book, draw. Later on, maybe you can go outside and go play. Come back in, you eat dinner, you can maybe sit and watch TV for a little bit. Go read a book or something, can't watch TV all day. The regular. But when my dad was there, it was, might wake up, kid, might go in there, brush your teeth, something like that. Grandma cooking or something, so as soon as you finish brushing your teeth, go inside the kitchen, go eat some food. But if my dad came inside while I was eating breakfast or something, and he went to my room and my bed wasn't made, that was another whooping. And I mean like a whooping. And so, I call it a whooping, but we all know. And so, then we got every time I used to take a bath, It was a very consistent, let me smell you every single time. You know, it was very, like I say, very militant. This is an everyday thing. I was used to this. And so I'm explaining that so you guys have an idea of how I'm thinking as a kid, how structured this lifestyle is. And, you know, that's good. And I'm not saying structure not good, y'all. I'm really not. But I think my confusion as a child came when the adults got into the picture. And I knew that when the adults got into the picture, when my dad used to chastise me or discipline me, I knew that was a problem on the inside. I obviously couldn't say anything, but I knew that was a problem on the inside. And so what I mean by that is, you know, I didn't understand why my dad didn't live there. And this is why my dad didn't live at the house. And to even get deeper, it goes even deeper. But so my dad didn't live at the house as a child. I was thinking because of the way he chastised me. And this is what I figured out way later again. And it was because of how he chastised me. And so, again, when I say the adults had to get involved, listen, every single day the adults had to get involved. Sometimes multiple times a day the adults had to get involved. Sometimes the adults had to get involved, so involved, to where they was fighting each other, trying to get involved. It's crazy because, you know, when you think about that, I'm the only child. And the only reason why these adults are fighting right now is because of me. And it's because of how my dad was chastising me. And so, you know, when you think about it, you're like, whoa. You know, just thinking about a child's psychology, y'all. Again, this is Confessions of a Child. I told y'all I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for my family. And I told, you know, if you listen to my day one, it's all about the secrets and the lies that are in our families. You know, we got to get rid of that. We got to have open communication. How do we parent? Do we have a healthy balance? Does the child have a healthy balance? So let's continue. In second grade, I tested for gifted. So let's go to second grade. I tested for gifted. I had a high IQ, tested for gifted. So now I'm in this gifted program. And because of the elementary school I went to, Hibiscus, there was, you know, gifted teachers. And I had the same two gifted teachers from like third grade all the way to fifth grade. And Dr. Sherry Manberg, I remember her name because her name was my name. So her name was Dr. Sherry Manberg, and I was one of my gifted teachers. I can't remember the other lady name, but so yeah, going back to the household, foundation years, you know, if anybody knows Jamaicans, man, it's like they are the most, and in my opinion, this is my opinion, they are like the most, they are the only people that I've met out of all the different types of cultures and out of all the different type of people that I met, Jamaicans are the only people that like could fuss. Da, 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 da. Yeah, boy. Oh, yeah, da, 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 da. The bumper rasta. Go off on each other. And then like 5 minutes later, it's like, you know, what's up? You want to go get something to eat? You know, but like, you know, it's like, they could get over it really quickly. And I'm explaining that because that was the typical household that I was in. You know, they were Jamaicans. So I would watch them fuss and fight and argue and cuss each other out and get over it like that. Not necessarily so in the Bahamian household. Sometimes they could get over it. They get over it, take them a little bit longer, but definitely not in the American household. They, you know, when they fuss and fight, they hold grudges. So as a child, understanding that dynamic, you remember, man, you know, intellectually, your intellect, your cognitive, your physical, your social, your emotional, all of those different things are being developed at the same time in your early development, in early childhood development. And so having these different understandings of these different social groups, which was an American family, a Bahamian family, you know, a Jamaican family. Having these different social groups, I understood at a very young age how to kind of move in each one. And so, again, going back to as a child, why I felt as though the arguments were about me. And that was because, you know, again, through my dad's strict educational teaching, you know, he would it was rough. It was definitely physical abuse. It was definitely verbal abuse. You know, in my Jamaican household, in my early childhood years, I experienced a lot of colorism. I experienced, you know, just a lot of identity issues. You know, as growing up in that Jamaican household around Jamaicans that speak patois all the time, all day, you know, as a child, you would kind of start to twist up your words, you know, in the patois dialect. And I remember, man, it was every time I said something too Jamaican, my grandma was like, "Hey, you are American. Don't talk like that." You know, it was very okay. You know, I used to have to make my talk proper. Proper English is what you talk. You are American. Talk proper English. You know, it was weird. It was very, very different dynamic that I was going through in my head. And so I couldn't talk too patois. You know, I couldn't talk too Jamaican because I was American. And every time I said I was Jamaican, they were kind of correcting me like, "No, you're Jamaican American. You know, like, you're American. You know, talk proper English, you know." And so, again, identity issues, because I know that this is my dad. And, you know, for you to not accept me as Jamaican, and it's like, what? You know, but again, I'm a child. I don't really know no better. I'm learning. This is a self-reflection series. So, I experienced a lot of colorism. So let me explain. I am the darkest, one of the darkest ones in my family now. At that time, growing up, I was the darkest, and my Jamaican family is like high yellow. Like, if, you know, black people, we come in all shades. So, you know, my Jamaican family was high yellow. I even had some Chinese Jamaican cousins, you know, everything. Like, I had some white, my great grandfather is white. You know, it's all mixed up in the Jamaican household. And so growing up as a child, because we had family members that looked all types of ways, I didn't understand why was there a necessity to always bring out my color. And one vivid memory that I have was when I met my Jamaican grandmother. I'm sorry, my great grandmother, which is my grandfather's mom. And I think she had just came from like Jacksonville or something like that. And I was really young, and I was really excited to meet her because this was my great grandmother. So, I was just really excited to meet her. She was from Jamaica, and so I was just really excited to meet her. And I remember, she was laying down on the couch. I don't think she was feeling good. And she walked up to, she didn't walk up to me. She was laying down, and I was like walking in the living room, and she was like looking at me. She was like, "Come here now." Come here now. Jamaican, that's like, come here. And so she was like, "Come here now." And so I walked over to her, I'm all excited. Walked up to her, and she just looked at me and she said, "You darky." And I was like, I'm thinking in my head, like, did she just call me dark? Like, I didn't say nothing, but I'm just like, what? In my head, And so it's like, "You darky, your mother Yankee." So she was talking about my mom being American. And so I was just like, oh, here we go. Like in my head, I was like, oh, yeah, I don't even remember what I said. But, yeah, man, there's a lot of colorism in the family, man. I just didn't understand that. I remember thinking, well, why is my color such an issue when my dad was like the darkest ones? He was the darkest sibling out of all his brothers and sisters. And so if my dad, Randy, was the darkest sibling out of his 6 brothers and sisters, and my mom was a beautiful black Barbie, what color thought I was gonna be? I wasn't gonna be high red or high yellow like everybody else. My mama and my daddy dog. And really my daddy had like the coolie color. If you know what the coolie color is, it's like that brown, tan, dark color. So I just never understood that growing up in a Jamaican household. So talking about, that's just my household, the Jamaican household experience. Again, I was the youngest, so there was no interaction with other children, except 2 children. And these children in those early years, we didn't go to the same school, but they lived right next door. And this was actually my first experience with religion. And because, I knew that, again, I experienced church with my Bahamian American family in the Baptist church, going with my grandmother. And my Jamaican family, it wasn't really church goers, but they believed in the Bible and they believed in Jesus. And then my neighbors next door, which I had that's my first best friend, Brittany. Oh man, Brittany was my best friend for a lot of reasons, man. Brittany was my best friend because we were a year apart, our birthdays were a day apart, and we stayed right next door to each other. And so, she was June 24th, I was June 25th. It was like, she was 9, I was 8. We stayed right next door to each other. I think I wore glasses, she didn't. And me and Brittany got really close because Brittany used to teach me. Brittany was a Seventh-day Adventist, and that was the only kid on the block. So it was just me at my Jamaican family house, and then my next door neighbor, Brittany. And so I remember I done read the Bible front to cover at least 10 times now. I done been beat a bunch of times over it. I know the Bible like the back of my hand. And so Brittany will say, you know, well, Brittany don't eat pork. You know, Brittany Seventh-day Adventist. Brittany go to church on Saturdays. Brittany have Sabbath on Fridays. And that's, like I said, Brittany don't eat pork. But I used to always go to Brittany's house. And so I asked my friend one day, you know, child conversation. And I say, Brittany, you know, why you don't eat pork? You know, I know we used to kind of eat pork. You know, we kind of eat all kind of stuff at both houses, you know. And so I say, Brittany, why you don't eat pork? Brittany say, well, because the Bible say we're not supposed to eat pork. And then Brittany, you know, Brittany is Seventh-day Adventist, so Brittany could show me in the Bible where it's so they don't eat the swine. So I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I'm a kid. So I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. I read that plenty times in the Bible. Oh, okay. I say, well, Brittany, why you go to church on Saturdays and not Sundays? Like, you know, like everybody else. Brittany said, well, you're supposed to go to church on the Sabbath day, which is the last day of the week. You know, you're supposed to rest on a Sabbath day or something like that. You know, something Brittany said. And Brittany showed me, and she said, because, you know, the Sabbath day is the last day of the week. Da, 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 da. And I say, yeah, you know, everybody know that Sunday is the first day of the week. So when you go from Sunday, Saturday is the last day of the week. And Brittany say, I say, dang, Brittany, you right. You're right. I guess we should. The Bible do say go to church on Saturday, da, 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 da. And so, you know, as a kid, I'm having these types of conversations with my friend. That's a whole nother religion. Our family, she was Haitian. Brittany was Haitian, y'all. So I was, you know, eating Haitian food because my next door neighbor was Haitian, and I used to always be over there, and that was the only kid that I could talk to when I wasn't in the madness at my at my Jamaican family house. And it wasn't all madness, y'all. It really wasn't. It was only when my dad was there. Only when my dad was there. And so let's continue on. My elementary experience, I went to Hibiscus. I went to Hibiscus, and they had a really good gifted program. And so being in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade gifted, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade gifted, I had a beautiful experience because I don't know the curriculum. Obviously, now that I look back on it, the curriculum it was a hell of a curriculum because, you know, we had this mentorship program that the 3rd graders mentored the 2nd graders, the 4th graders mentored, you know, I think the 2nd and the 3rd graders. You know, some sort of program or exchange where from 3rd grade all the way to 5th grade, we were mentoring either 2nd graders, 3rd graders, 2nd graders, you know, something like that. And so I remember having that experience, and we used to read to our mentees, and we used to do a lot of different projects and things like that. As well as, and if anyone's experienced on a gifted education and how the gifted learner learns, you know that it's very experiential, very hands-on. And so that gifted experience, man, was awesome. And I think it's because we learned differently. We had to come out of the regular classroom at least 3 or 4 times a week to be in a secluded area, a whole nother building that was full of stuff, like a play area. It was like this area. It was like its whole own building. We had like our own building. And that was the gifted experience, as well as we had mentees. In the 2nd grade was where I met my best friend, Vanessa. We're still best friends to this day, actually. Yeah, man, because I was like a little quirky kid, and Vanessa walked up to me one day and she was like, "You my best friend." And I think I just cherish that for the rest of my life. Uh, yeah, and ever since then, me and Vanessa have been best friends. And because we were in gifted too, it just, we always had the same classes. We always were in the same classrooms, from elementary school all the way to high school. And then we had, going back to the Jamaican household, y'all. So again, my physical, my social as a child, my cognitive, my intellectual skills, how I learned, everything was great, as you all could see. But I think my emotional wasn't being as engaged as it should be. And the reason why I say that is because, in the early childhood development, that's kind of something that children need. Children need that nurture. They need that care. They need that stimulation. They need the nutrition. And so some very vivid memories is that in elementary school, my Jamaican household was crazy. Listen, my dad beat me with no care in the world, and I could feel that anytime that he beat me. And he used to take my shirt, drag me up on the wall, hey girl, what me tell you I do? Go read a book, something like, just, it was for every little thing, man, every little thing. It could be for literally like the most simplest thing. My grandmother, my Jamaican grandmother, will cook oxtails, and, she'll cook dinner, and she'll fix me a plate, fix the child a plate, fix a child plate, fix her kid's plate. We all eating dinner at the table. My dad come in the house, he look at my plate, he'll take my plate. It's the child plate now. He'll take my plate, he'll go back up to the pot, he'll make like a man plate. Make a man plate, sit it back down in front of me and be like, eat all of it. It's just like, hey, yeah, you better eat it all. And it was just like, and, at first, the family don't really say nothing. And everybody kind of just don't say nothing. My dad just being my dad. Everybody kind of just, they don't say nothing. They just like, whatever. And in my head, I'm like, damn, boy, I gotta eat all this food. And so, listen, if my daddy said, don't move, don't get up, and I better eat all that food that he put on that plate, then I wasn't about to get up. And I was gonna sit right there and eat all that food. So you gotta think, man, cognitively, man, I remember sitting there crying, man, just crying. Just crying, eating all my food, just crying, eating all my food. And the family, they'll be like, Lashery, you don't have to eat it all. Don't eat it. Don't worry about what your daddy said. Don't eat it all. Just go on in the room. Go on. And I'm sitting right there and I ain't moving. And I'm still eating that food. And they hot now. At this point, the whole family mad. My grandma mad, my aunties mad, my granddaddy mad, everybody mad. My daddy he could be sitting on the couch. He could be outside. It don't matter. He like, you better not move till you eat that food. You know what I'm saying? And so I'll be sitting there for hours eating one plate, y'all. Just sitting there for hours, man, hours. And the whole house will be arguing and fussing and fighting and carrying on. And they'll be like, Randy, go on away from here, so. And, it was just like a continuous thing, man. It was like all the time. It was just like for every little thing, y'all. Man, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was really crazy. And I didn't understand that, man. And I was like, I feared my dad. I feared him. I feared this man. Listen, I feared this man. I feared him because I knew that it was always 7 people taking up for me. Remember, my Jamaican household is a big family. It was always 7 people or 6 people against one man. And he always got his point across. every single time. And so as a kid, you like, it ain't in your mind, you're like, what ain't shit y'all could do for me. Like when he beating my tail, there's literally nothing that all 6 of y'all adults could do. Because y'all is like, the only thing that, like I say, most of the times it got to a point where now my uncle's trying to fight my dad and make him leave the house, because that's the only way that I'ma like be released from, like, you know, if he just leave the house. And so, you know, going through that again, like I say, that's my whole elementary experience. Every little thing, it was just complete upside down. And that's in the Jamaican household, y'all. I'm only telling you about the Jamaican household. Now going into the American household with my grandma Bowie, which was always a beautiful thing, because listen, anytime I was able to get away from my Jamaican household, which was my mom coming to pick me up on the weekends, or you know, and when my mom came and picked me up on the weekends, I either knew that I was either going to her house or I was going to my grandma Bowie house, my other daddy house. And so I was just always happy to just go over there, because it was cool, it was loving, it was nurturing, even though it was fun, it was, you know, it was everything else. It wasn't complete madness. And when I say madness, I'm talking about the arguing, the fussing, the fighting, the continuous of that, the violence. You know, it was a lot of that. You know, the domestic violence. You know, and so going on. So again, y'all, my mom used to pick me up on the weekends, because now I'm in elementary school and I live with my Jamaican family. But when my mama picked me up on the weekends while I'm living with my Jamaican family, I go to my mom's house on the weekends. Anytime I went to my mom's house, it was like, you know, at that time, I don't really think she did a lot of cooking. So it was a lot of eating out, like eating fast foods. And so when I ate the fast foods, every time I went back to my Jamaican family house for the whole weekend. So I done ate fast food all weekend. But, you know, living in a Jamaican household during the week, you know, they cook dinner. And so eating fast food, American fast food, going on the weekends, all weekend, coming back on Sunday night, it was literally like every single time I was sick. I was a very sickly child. I told y'all in my last video I had some sort of bacteria in my blood. I don't know how, but listen, I was sick. And every single time, man, you know, my family, my Jamaican family used to be so angry. I remember them being so angry because every single weekend they used to have to, like, I never probably went to school on those Mondays because I was always throwing up. I was just throwing up. I was throwing up all that fast food that I ate all week, and I was sick every single time, y'all. Every time. And I remember my Jamaican family, they would be so mad. Every time she go on to our mother house, she eat the fast food, she come back, she'll be sick. Da, 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 da. Listen, man, it was like another argument because of that. It was an argument because I went to my mama's house and ate fast food and got sick and came back every Sunday sick. And Monday morning was sick all day, and they always had to nurse me back to health every single time. And so, you know, I didn't understand it. All I knew is that I got sick, but all I knew is that I like to be more with my mama and my grandma Bowie family way more than I like to be with my daddy, especially when my daddy come over there. Now, when my daddy wasn't there, it was good. But when my daddy was there, look. So, whew, oh yeah. So like I say, man, going into elementary school, just kind of keep going. The other weekends which was a lot of weekends, I went to my grandma Bowie house. And being a kid, you don't really understand. But I feel bad for my mom, man, because back in those days, man, she didn't know what to do, man. Here you have one family that fell in love with this kid, and they kind of, they think, just, I don't know. So my mom used to bring me over to my grandma Bowie house on the weekend sometimes too. Like if she wanted to do something, she wanted to go out. She was still young, so if she wanted to hit the street, she wanted to go out, woo woo woo, she'll take me over to my grandma Bowie house, even though I was technically supposed to be spending time with her. She would always like take me over to my grandma Bowie house. So in those weekends that I went to my grandma Bowie house and I didn't spend time with her, which was a few weekends too, I remember it wouldn't be no time wasted. I would be getting picked up from our Jamaican family house, and we'll be riding in the car, and it'll be like, look, all right now, you live with me. Don't talk about your Jamaican family. Don't say nothing. Don't. You live with me. And I'll be like, okay, because I knew that, my Bowie family, my Bahamian American family, they wouldn't know. They would, I don't know, I'm a kid, but I just knew not to say nothing, because then they would probably go to asking me a bunch of questions about, I don't know, whatever. So I always knew not to say anything. So I went to, I love coming over to my Bowie family house, because it was always cool. I would always got to chill with my uncles, and if my uncles was chilling with his homeboys or something, then I was able to go outside and I could play at the park while he playing at the park football or basketball or whatever at the park with his homeboys or whatever. And I was the only kid, but I was already used to being the only kid in a Jamaican household, so being the only kid in the Bahamian American household, being, watched by my uncles, it was cool to me too, because at least I didn't have to be getting my behind beat while reading a book, and or for doing anything, or to eat a whole plate, or whatever it was, whatever it was. And so I was really always excited to go to my grandma Bowie house. I know we always went to church. I know my grandma Bowie used to take me to go get pictures, and like family photos and stuff like that. So I always liked that kind of stuff. And so, every weekend when the weekend was over now, going back to my Jamaican family house, it was, all right now, you was with me all weekend, don't talk about the Bowie family. And so I knew going to my Jamaican family house, I couldn't talk about what I did all weekend with my Bowie family. And with my Bowie family, we probably could have did anything. We probably could have, whatever. So I just always knew not to talk about the two families to each other. And again, because of I used to adore my mother, I just enjoyed, what I was doing, in a sense, I guess in a sense, yeah. It was almost like I liked to go to my Bowie family house because it was cool over there. Everybody was cool. It was fun. It was always laughs. It was always, music with my uncle. It was always just good vibes. And, again, it was like that with my Jamaican family, but when my dad was around, it was crazy. And so going on, 2001, I believe I was maybe like 4th grade, I'm thinking. So about fourth grade, and 2001 is actually when 9/11 happened. And I remember when 9/11 happened because I remember my teacher, Dr. Manberg. Dr. Manberg, first of all, I don't know what, I remember just being at the desk or something. Then Dr. Manberg say, "Oh my gosh!" She cut on the TV real fast. Cause you know, this the gifted, we in the gifted domain. So we got TVs and all that. So she cut on the TV real fast. And she said, she looking at the TV. And she was like, "Oh my gosh." You know, just like, she was looking. I remember her saying, like, I guess I remember vividly her saying, like, "Are you serious?" Like, I remember her saying, like the buildings went down that fast. And it was just like, you know, it was like a what? You know, like, you know, but then she was just kind of like so surprised and distressed that she was watching these buildings fall. The whole class had watched the buildings fall, you know, and so it was like a what? It was almost like, I don't want to almost say it was like she couldn't believe that it was happening, but it was also weird. I remember getting the feeling that she was like, how did that even happen like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? You know, steel frame building. But so I remember that happening, and yeah, man, I remember Dr. Sherry Manberg. She cried. She said she cried. She cried after that. And she just cried. And she just sat there and cried. And the whole class, we was, you know, we gifted kids, so we very aware of what's happening. And, you know, this is a major event, 9/11. And yeah, I remember that. That was heavy. I was in my gifted class when that happened with Dr. Manberg. And I guess going into back to my Jamaican family house. So at this time, you know, I'm still living with my Jamaican family. Again, my Jamaican family didn't believe in materialistic things. So I was that kid who didn't have the best shoes. I had, you know, good stuff, but it wasn't like the Nikes or the American lifestyle of things. And so I remember, you know, always kind of getting picked on about my shoes. I used to wear glasses, so I always had glasses. I used to get picked on about my glasses. I used to get picked on because I was kind of quirky. I used to get picked on because I talked a lot, I had a lot of energy. And not like picked on like in a bad way, but, you know, all kids remember when they get picked on. So, you know, going into my granddad, you know, my granddad passed away, and he was a big reason, I believe now, I know now, why I was in the household, why I was living in that household. And my granddad, you know, he was like the mellow person of the household, in the Jamaican household. He always, you know, he was very, you know, he was the business owner. He was the one that moved his family from Jamaica. And he was also a little bit darker. But he was a very, very mellow man. Everybody loved him. I didn't know one person that did not like my granddad. Like, he was that type of man that everybody loved. And he was the only person that I knew who spoke 2 languages. And my granddad, he used to always do a lot of business in Venezuela. And he spoke Spanish, and he also spoke, you know, patois, and he spoke English, you know. And so I was just always super, super impressed with my granddad and just how my granddad loved me. You know, again, like I say, I wasn't really babied. I didn't sleep with my parents. I didn't, you know, I wasn't able to lay in the bed with my parents. I had my own bed since I was a kid, living with my Jamaican family. Always had my own bed, just always kind of just been by myself. Always was the only kid. Always was, you know, just kind of always by myself. And so going into late elementary, I started to realize that I like to be at my mom's house more. And so by this time, my mom, she by this time, I think my mom is like remarried or married, uh, and so my mom had her own apartment, and so I remember being able to have her keys, and so I had her keys, and because her apartment wasn't that far away from my Jamaican family house, and because I had my mama keys, I used to sometimes leaving elementary school. I used to just walk to my mama house, to the apartments in the back, and so that was something that I enjoyed because my mom, she wasn't usually there, so I was just able to kind of just go to her house, chill at her house, and then if I fell asleep or something, I could always call my Jamaican family and say, oh yeah, I went to my mom's house, or something, and then I always knew that I could call my mom to kind of take up for me, and I think low key my mom knew that I didn't want to be in my Jamaican family house, but because I was in school and they was kind of raising me, I was already living there, and so yeah, my granddad died, and I realized that when my granddad died was when I actually left my Jamaican family house. And so yeah, I can't skip days. Now I'm about to mesh the 2 days together. So now going into when my granddad died was when I actually full-time moved into my mom's house. And so that's like the end of 5th grade, somewhere around there. So something that always also stuck with me was, you got to think at this point in my life, I'm about 10 years old, 11 years old. And at this point in time of my life, I thought that I was the only one that knew the secret with my two families, and well, besides me and my mom and my mom's family. And when my granddad died, which was extremely a big piece, I remember I had to go to my mom's house the very next weekend. But instead of going to my mom's house, we already know where I went. I went to my grandma Bowie house. And so I remember my grandma Bowie came and picked me up from my mom's house. This was the weekend after my granddad died. And I remember riding in the car with my grandmother Bowie. And I knew that I was going through a grieving time because this was my granddad. This is the guy who always took up for me when my daddy was going crazy. This is my granddad, and my grandma Bowie say, it's just me and her in the car now. And she said, how you doing? I know your grandfather just died. How do you feel? And like my heart dropped. My heart just completely dropped, y'all. Like it completely dropped. And it dropped because at that moment, I knew that she knew that I had another family. Just from that one statement. And so all I remember saying, just like I'm okay. And she was just like, all right, like I'm here. And then I was just like, okay, and then we kind of never really talked about it. But for me as a child, that moment was so important to me, and it was very influential, because I knew that in that moment, she knew that I had another family. And so I was going through this grief from losing my granddad, and then my other grandma from my other dad's side just asked me, how am I doing? Y'all understand what was going through my mind was that, wait, so she know? So I've been lying this whole, I wasn't sure. But I remember her saying, I'm sorry, I just thought about it. I remember her saying, I seen on the news that your granddad passed away. How are you doing? And that's how she seen it, because it was on the news. How my granddad passed away, and it was on the news because he was working under his car, and a small business owner in Miami, and he was working on his car, and I think it had rained like the day before or earlier that day, but he was working under his car, but it had rained earlier that day. But when he was working under his car, it wasn't raining, and he had the thing to hold up the engine. I think he was working on the engine in the backyard of the house. So this was the house that we actually lived in. I was in school that day, and the engine actually fell on his chest because the mechanism that was actually holding up the engine, it sank into the mud, and that's how the engine fell on his chest. And so my Jamaican granddad, died in the backyard of our house. And like I say, my grandma Bowie, when she asked me about it, I was like, hey, I was surprised. I was extremely surprised. In that moment, as a child, I knew that my grandmother knew that I had another family. And she was also accepting that I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And so, again, as a child, I was still surprised that she knew. I'm thinking, I don't know what happened before me, but all I know is that she knew. And so, that's early childhood, man. I think that's it, man. I think that's early childhood. I think I'm gonna stop it right there. And the reason why I'm doing this, y'all, is because children, when early childhood, you go through things, like the emotional, the social, the physical development of like young children. Like the research already shows that it has a direct effect on their overall development, and it also it has an influence on the adult that they become. And so a part of my 7-day atonement is Confessions of a Child, self-reflection series. So again, y'all, I'm tired of the secrets and the lies that we hold in our families. The American culture was built off secrets. It was built off of lies. It was built off of saying one thing or doing one thing, but then on the other side, this is what you're really doing. And I think that it ended up developing into, the systems that was created in America, and then it ended up developing even deeper into like the social and how we deal with each other socially. And it all starts from the family. So yeah, it's just early childhood. And so yeah, early childhood. I think I'm gonna end it right here, and I'm gonna end it with my prayer. I submit my being to the universe. I submit my being to the world. I submit my being to all of creation. I submit my being to Last Air Society. I submit my being to my community. I submit my being to my family. I submit my being to my parents. I submit my being to my students and all my children. I submit my being, to my parents, all three of them. And I submit my being to my mind, my body, and my spirit. So this was day 2, early childhood. Day 3, middle childhood, which is another experience. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a long ride. And actually, y'all, I guess I just want to say, I was speaking with my friend yesterday, and she suggested to me that people are gonna want to ask more questions. And so I figure on the last day, y'all can ask me whatever questions you want. Yeah. See.